Membranes are thin sheets of tissue that cover surfaces, line body cavities, and surround organs. Membranes are classified as epithelial, which include these three types of membranes that we're going to take a look at in this portion of the course, as well as connective tissue. These are types of tissues that we will see throughout the course at various times, but that we won't focus on here in the tissues other than to say there are such thing as connective tissue membranes. Although epithelial membranes are called epithelial, these membranes contain both an epithelial sheet as well as an underlying layer of connective tissue. So let's take a look at the three types of epithelial membranes that have epithelial tissue as well as underlying connective tissue. The first is the cutaneous membrane. Another term for the cutaneous membrane is the skin. And we're going to take a look at the skin in the next unit. But to take a quick look now, we can see that it's made up of a layer of epithelial tissue at the top, the sort of darker pink here, and then underlying that, where you find the base of the hair as well as the sweat glands in the image here, is the dermal layer, an underlying layer made of connective tissue. The second type of membrane is the mucous membrane. Mucous membranes line all body cavities that open to the exterior of the body. They include things like the digestive system. So in this image here, we have the mouth, as well as leading back to the esophagus and down to the stomach, and then the inner lining of the intestines. But they also make up the urinary system, the reproductive system, and the respiratory system, because ultimately all of these are exposed to the exterior of our body. Mucous membranes are adapted for absorption secretion. They also secrete mucus, which helps to keep the membrane moist and lubricates it. For example, in the digestive tract, we want the food to move smoothly through the digestive tract with minimal friction while the absorption process is occurring. The third type of membrane has many subcategories, and so there's going to be a lot of terms exposed here. But all of these different types of membranes fall into the category of serous membranes. Serous membranes line the ventral body cavities that are not open to the exterior of the body, so the thoracic cavity and the abdominal pelvic cavity. The only way to reach these cavities would be to enter into the body surgically. The serous membranes secrete a thin, watery serous fluid that allows the membranes to slide easily past one another. And so what we're going to do here is describe the function and the location of these different serous membranes, the pericardium, the pleura, and the peritoneum. And so let's take a first look at the pericardium. There's actually two layers involved in each of these serous membranes. So you'll notice that there's a visceral pericardium and a parietal pericardium. Before we look at the visceral and the parietal, let's talk about the term pericardium. So that prefix peri means around, and cardium is actually referring to the heart. And so if we were to look at the heart here and then take out a cross section of the heart, we would see that in that cross section of the heart, we have various layers. We have on the left side the inner layer of the heart, and in the middle the muscular layer, and then on the outside we have the pericardium around the outside of the heart. This pericardium is actually made up of two layers. The first is the visceral pericardium. The term visceral or viscera is referring to organ. And so this layer, the visceral pericardium, is up against the organ, up against the heart. And then the parietal pericardium means that it's away from the heart. And so the pericardium is this two-layer tissue that surrounds the entire heart, but made up of two layers, one layer up against the heart and one layer away from the heart. If we were to continue then, we could take a look at the pleura. There's again a visceral pleura and a parietal pleura. But the pleura refers to the lungs. And so here we have an image kind of showing a cross-section of the lung, as well as a rib on the side. You can see the bone cross-section through, and then the intercostal muscle, which is the muscle between the ribs. But then what we notice is that the pleura, the layer that is surrounding the lungs, is made up of two layers. Parietal pleura is the layer further away from the lungs, and the visceral pleura is the layer of serous membrane right up against the lung itself. In between the parietal pleura and the visceral pleura is the pleural cavity. This is the space in which the serous fluid is secreted. That way there's this thin watery fluid that's between the two layers that allow them to easily glide past each other because of the lubrication provided. And so in the pleura and the pericardium, as well as in the peritoneum, this is the case, that between these two layers, the serous fluid is being secreted so that as we move around, or as we breathe, or as our heart beats, the two layers can easily glide over each other and the friction is reduced. We can look at the last layer here, which is the peritoneum. The peritoneum is referring to surrounding the abdominal pelvic organs. Again, we have the visceral peritoneum and parietal peritoneum because the visceral peritoneum surrounds all the organs within the abdominal pelvic cavity, and the parietal peritoneum surrounds or is further away from those organs and is up against the abdominal pelvic cavity on the inside of the body.